It's a great pleasure to be here, and really appreciate the first panel that was here too. Very exciting time, and I'm fully supportive of these kinds of things and agree that electric is where we got to go first. And the UCI campus, as a matter of fact, has deployed a whole fleet of electric buses already, and it also includes one hydrogen fuel cell bus. Similar to what's happening in society, the electric buses are coming first, but we can't forget the hydrogen buses in the end, can't forget hydrogen as one of the solutions for a 100% renewable and zero emissions economy. The UC system is leading a whole bunch of initiatives that are leading to carbon neutrality by 2025. The whole university system's committed to this, and the UC Office of the President is helping by doing a whole bunch of things, as you can see on the slide here, offering energy services, offering renewable energy that we can purchase at any one of the campuses, and investing in biogas resources, and even cleaning up those bio resources so that we don't have the short-lived climate pollutant emissions from those bio resources. I think the first thing, though, and most important thing that the campuses are doing is energy efficiency. This is the projection that we had in 1990 for the UCI campus in blue. The green line is what we are actually doing with regard to our energy consumption. This is a greater than 50% reduction in energy use on the campus. That's the very first thing we got to do. And then we got to figure out ways to store energy. And one of the coolest ways we can store it on a campus like ours is to effectively store electricity for all of our air conditioning loads as cold water. This thermal energy storage allows us to provide our cooling load at any time of day or night. And as a matter of fact, most of the cooling now is starting to come from the solar that we've installed on campus, because we can charge our thermal energy storage at any time of day or night. And as a matter of fact, we've installed all kinds of solar. These are the smart buildings, but we installed all kinds of solar. We have 4.3 megawatts of solar PV on our campus. This is fully about, we have a 4 megawatt peak, but we only have 16 megawatts of continuous use. Now that sounds like we have a lot of solar on campus. As a matter of fact, per unit of energy on campus, it's a lot for most campuses. But if we look at it for the whole year, it's less than 5% of the total energy. That makes me very disappointed. So what if we plastered solar power all over the campus? And this is similar for almost all urban environments. We can't just do local solar and be zero net energy. Even if we put all the solar on campus that we possibly could, it would change this number substantially, but it would only get us to about 25% or so. So we need massive solar out in the desert and solar on our campuses. In addition, we need to start electrifying so many of our end uses to get rid of the gas that we are currently using on our campuses. And the very biggest, and we've looked at all kinds of ways to electrify, right? Using heat pumps, using all kinds of electric substitutes for gas demand at this point. But the biggest one that we found in our recent studies is electrifying transportation. So the panel that was just here, this is exactly what we got to do. Electrify the transportation demand. That's what gives the 12.6% reduction in greenhouse gases that I'm showing on the slide here. But again, we need zero. And that's very difficult. I'm going to skip this slide. So the only way that we're going to end up getting to zero is by adding way more renewable energy onto the grid than we even currently are planning to install. We can't just stop at the 50%, because even at the 50% renewable, that's what I was showing on the previous slide, we only have a 20% reduction in total greenhouse gas from the grid, because we have more energy compared to 1990. More energy, we're getting 50% of it from renewables, but it's not that big a reduction. And then we need to replace all the gas uses with something that's zero emissions. And what are some of the options? Battery energy storage, we're applying that all over the place. This is really important to do. We can build more pumped hydro. Anyone here for that? Okay, we can build more pumped hydro. But I think that we need every quiver, every arrow in the quiver to make this work. And hydrogen, I think, must be one of those arrows. Why do I say that? I think it's a lot of reasons, but I want you to think just from a magnitude, the scale of what we have to do to make this work. Just from a magnitude perspective, because this is a simulation that some of our students, I have one of our outstanding PhD students in the audience, have done with a 100% renewable year. And what is shown is that every hour, we either have excess renewable available, those are the surpluses that you see on the bottom, going all the way to 120 gigawatts, okay? And all of the deficits that you see going up only to about 40 gigawatts, okay? That's the biggest deficit we have at any given hour. To make it through the whole year, we need to install more renewable power, okay, more renewable power, and to actually curtail some of it. This is the most cost-effective way to do it. But we also need to store it every day. So we need 120 gigawatts of power. How do we get that? This is our existing hydro. That's not going to get us there alone. What about the gas grid? Now that's massive in comparison, even to the hydro, but that alone won't get us there either. You can stack the hydro on top of the gas grid and you can't do it. We need hydro, the gas grid, and electric vehicles. If you put these all together, now we can finally see how you can make it through the whole year. Right? You have to stack them on top of each other to meet that electric power demand, and then you need the energy that can be stored in the form of hydrogen in the gas grid. Now, if we put more wind power in, and this is assuming 21 million electric vehicles. Okay, 21 million electric vehicles. That's a lot more than the 5 million that the governor is proposing, but this is all needed for us to make it through the year. Now, if we have more wind power, it changes the dynamics pretty considerably, but we still need all of these things to make it through the year. And especially now you can start to see the seasonal need, right? There's a whole bunch of excess solar available in the summer that we need to move to the winter and fall and spring, okay? In this particular case, and only the gas grid has the magnitude that we need to make it all work. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Lehmann from Germany, and I have 3 slides. They're going in more or less in the same direction that you are arguing. We're talking about greenhouse gas neutral Germany or greenhouse gas neutral industrialized countries, if we're talking about a greenhouse gas neutral world, then we always have to talk about lowering the energy necessities by efficiency, but also by avoiding things, less transport, or thinking about if or not I should travel with the air transport here or taking something else. So we have efficiency, we have avoiding discussion about what is the welfare system and that, and at the end of the day, you have to deliver a greenhouse gas neutral fuel. That's the easy strategy in 3 steps to get to a greenhouse gas neutral world. We in Germany have at the moment a climate action plan 2050 where we will commit ourselves as Germany to something between 80 and 95% less greenhouse gas emissions in the year 2050. So that's the discussion at the moment. The 80% is easy. Even the German Association of Industry and Small and Medium Enterprises said that 80% is doable in Germany without any economic problems, even with getting more jobs and all the other things. We as an agency say that is doable with 95%, okay? 95% is 1 ton per capita in the year of 2050. if you look at the difference between the 80 and the 95, you realize that this is only doable. This is the emissions of Germany in 1990, the emissions a few years ago, and that is what we should arrive in the year 2050. That is greenhouse gas neutral. By the way, we need that for agriculture because there is no greenhouse gas neutral agriculture. So we reserve that little for the agriculture, and that means that our thinking is more or less in the same thing. We use power to anything. It means you use electricity coming from renewables for heating, for cooling, for making chemical substances for the industry, hydrogen there, fertilizer, whatever. And this is not a cross-sectoral, also an intersectoral coupling. Means that let's say the copper industry in North Germany, which produces at a certain time, starts to make a demand and supply according to the production due to renewables. And if you look at that, we have made several studies about that, then you see a similar picture you have showed.
Yes.
You have is a 100% renewable energy system of Germany, and one of the several things we had published in the last years, and we use data, meteorological data from 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010, and what you see is that we have the surplus and the needs. You have in red the pumped storage today at the very far right. Then you have 42 million electric vehicles. It's theoretical because I think we have in the last year 4,000 new electric vehicles in Germany. I think we have to do something in the policy there. Then you see, then we see the capacity of the existing gas grid in Germany, which is very high. So it can you also use for seasonal storage and the pumped storage. The idea is the same. Whatever mixture you take, whatever, if you like more hydrogen or you like more power to liquid or if you like a little bit of that, there are very different ways of delivering the fuel at the end of the day if you have an efficient energy system. And if you look in that, we analyzed a lot of 100% studies. You see that there is no 100% electrical world, there is no 100% hydrogen world, and there's also a world where you need hydrocarbons for air transport, for example. No, it's a lot. It's if you look at the German necessity of power to liquid for air transport, then it's more or less the same size you have for the internal electricity. But that's another story.
Okay.
So, and that's what we have. We have to, and if we are talking about, let's say, exchanging knowledge, what we need, and that's something which is very important, is that we exchange this knowledge, that we talk with the different people on the different places in the world and say, look, there is a possible range of greenhouse gas neutral final energy sources. They are different for each. Argentina will have something different than California, than we in Germany, than others. And an important part of our work must be in the future to exchange the knowledge, to go into it and to create the markets, because the technology is there, and to bring it running in the next years. Okay, so that's my answer on your opening. And
yeah, so I think what we'd like to do actually is to invite the audience to participate immediately in the discussion and see if you guys have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to bring into the discussion. So, and it would be nice if someone had a microphone to go around. I think we have that opportunity in the back here. So please, yeah, raise your hands, and then we got microphones are coming. Okay, so let's start over here.
My name is Shirley Goodman, the Connected Energy Initiative. We are based at the Lennox Foundation in San Francisco. So I'm going to ask a question through my own lens, which is about the role of information and communication technology. A lot of the conversation this morning has been really focused on generation, distribution, concerns about transmission, not very much about demand response, and not very much about the boundaries between those four systems in terms of how do we leverage communication technology for network, for orchestration and smoothing those peaks and valleys of 100% renewable energy. And I'm just curious about your thoughts.
So I believe that's essential. It's actually part of the first thing that we should do when we talk about the energy efficiency measures, demand response, reducing the demand, eliminating certain things from what we are doing. That's the very first thing that we should do. And then it also plays a very important role also in the new technologies that you adopt to manage the grid, to manage your energy economy, for example. A really good case in point is smart charging, right? When do you want to charge? You want to charge when the renewables are available. And information technology and communications technology, of course, is directly essential for doing those kinds of things.
But please be careful introducing all these information technologies for 3 reasons. The hopes are bigger than probably the results will be. One example, at the moment in Europe, people are thinking that introducing an electrification of the whole house will help to lower demand. If you look at the total amount of electricity a modern household has, then it will not have that much impact on the electricity needs, because already today a lot of things are happening very efficient, and that's one of, clearly it's a market, second, so Bosch and the others are seeing that there are new gadgets they can sell, and these new gadgets, they will need electricity, and they will need a lot of electricity. And if you look at the analysis where the growth of electricity, the additional growth of electricity in the future is information technology, and that's a danger. Yeah. Think about Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs this year that amount of electricity Denmark is needing. And that means that we are entering a technology which at the end of the day doesn't help us to lower the energy needs. So be careful. It is good, but be careful. So the message is, and last thing, it's a security problem, okay? Hacking. If you think in Germany, there's a list existing of cogeneration plants which are open. It's not, I know the guys who have that. If I look at the amount of cogeneration plants which could be switched off, this is a real danger for the grid stability, for security, if people enter all these cogenerations and play around with them.
Okay, next question over here.
Good morning, Leslie Alden from Marin County. I had actually a comment and a question for the previous panel, but it absolutely relates to what you are talking about. Dr. Brouwer, I saw your labs last year at UC Irvine with this conference when it was down there. We're talking in the last conversation, it was really about zero emissions in transportation. So that's really talking about tailpipe emissions. But I think the issue that I would be concerned about when we're talking about hydrogen is not so much the tailpipe emissions, but how hydrogen is created. So what is economic now is actually hydrogen that is created from natural gas. So right there, this is not a sustainable or renewable sort of approach. It's certainly not fossil free. What are your thoughts about moving to the currently less economic approach to creating hydrogen using solar?
Well, that's actually a major focus of our program, and maybe you noticed that we actually are doing solar electrolysis for making hydrogen on our campus. You are correct that today it is more expensive than making it from natural gas, and yet I think that the end game is not, that is not the case. And if you looked at the simulations we did for the entire year, that was using pure renewable electricity, okay, all from wind and solar, going into electrolysis, making hydrogen, using the gas grid to store it and to deliver it back, but then using a fuel cell on the back end to actually make electricity again. Okay, so this is the ultimate goal is going to zero natural gas. Now, the reason that electrolytic renewable hydrogen is expensive today is not necessarily the capital cost of the equipment, which is a little bit higher than it should be today, but that's going to come down. The key reason it's expensive is the same reason that the bus charging is expensive. Is because there currently aren't good policies for enabling the electrolyzers to use the energy when it's cheaply available, let's say on the wholesale market in the desert right next to the solar farm that has to curtail, okay, and these kinds of things. But these are going to change over time too. And Angelina is working with the CAISO to kind of open up markets to electrolyzers and batteries and these kinds of things to get either cheap electricity for providing a service, or to pay full price for the electricity and get paid to do a service for the grid. So eventually these policies, I think, are going to play out and lead to this being the lower cost solution than doing everything with pumped hydro or everything with batteries. It's going to be a combination. You do some stuff with batteries, you do some stuff with pumped hydro, and you do some stuff with hydrogen, all from solar and wind.
Yeah, also power to gas is possible. You can make methane, and you can also go to other chemicals which you can use in the system. And
ammonia for fertilizer.
Yeah, et cetera.
You can make liquid fuels for aviation.
Yeah.
Again, all from the sun and wind.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, a friend of me got a candle. This candle was made of solar energy because it was made by such a chemical process.
Yeah. A candle made from solar energy. That's awesome. Old school. Yes.
Yeah, so Dan Lashoff with Next Gen Policy Center. My question follows on to that. If we think about trying to make hydrogen cost-effective by primarily using electricity that would otherwise be curtailed, even if you can get that electricity for free, you have to, depending on what the capital cost of the electrolyzers are, there's some level of capacity factor that you have to reach to make hydrogen in a way that would, say, be competitive with either electricity for vehicles or gasoline for vehicles. Do you have a sort of rule of thumb that you can offer in terms of kind of what kind of capacity factor? And obviously there's a trade-off there between the cost of electricity and the capacity factor that you need to make hydrogen competitive. What does that curve look like?
So currently, as you know, because we're not curtailing that much electricity, the capacity factor would be extremely low at the current renewable level that we are at. We're okay back there, he assures me. Thumbs up. Okay, and we have looked at how this might work even with an 80% renewable grid. There will be 500 megawatts of renewable capacity that would otherwise be curtailed 70% of the time at an 80% renewable grid. So in other words, we could install 500 megawatts of electrolyzers that would operate 70% of the time, which is a very high capacity factor, with an 80% renewable grid. Now, what would be economic is not certain because it all depends upon the initial capital cost and then how much it gets amortized over those years. But we think that up to about a 50% capacity factor, which would be a huge market for producing hydrogen from solar and wind, we can actually make it cost competitive in the future when the capital costs are more reasonable. So, and I don't know where that number is going to fall, but it's got to be a reasonable capacity factor as you suggest.
May I add one sentence on this bloody discussion about cost competitive? We are comparing with fossil fuels. We are comparing with sources that change our climate. We are comparing with costs which we don't know. And in Germany, we are talking that we have to have an economic viable way. We have to go through the Energiewende so that the society can pay it. But at the end of the day, we will not be able to compare the costs of, let's say, lignite electricity with wind energy because we want to phase out the one, and that's a decision, and to phase in the other one. And then the discussion doesn't go over what is the cost competitive way, what is the most cheapest and most intelligent way, which produces the most working places, etc., etc., where you don't have stranded investments and such things. And that's a different view of looking into cost competitiveness.
Yeah, I totally like that very much, Harry. Thank you. I mean, because eventually, even if we're using the millions of years of investment that the Earth has put into these resources in a couple hundred years, right? It's not sustainable no matter what, okay? So we can't compare it to fossil fuels, certainly. But I think your idea is comparing it to batteries, for example. And there are definite, if you look at the cost of battery energy storage, which is coming down very substantially, and the cost of doing this, there are certain applications in which it's going to be more cost-effective to do battery energy storage. And there are going to be certain applications, especially like seasonal energy storage, where it's going to be more cost-effective to do hydrogen and fuels, okay, from the sun. Yes, back here.
Hi, my name is Armando Davila, and this might be a more basic question for the room, but I was just a little confused about I heard some climate research saying that we don't have till 2050 to get 100% renewable and 100% fossil fuel free, that we need more of like a 3 to 5 year timeline, or say a 10-year timeline. It seems that, like the German fellow was saying, that, you know, comparing it to fossil fuel costs and the cost of climate catastrophe, there is no economic model for extinction. And I was just wondering and there's all this talk about creating a market. And maybe I just don't understand, maybe my understanding of the climate timeline we're on is incorrect, but it seems to me that we could pull this off way more rapidly if we were on a more kind of crisis, extinction-oriented mindset. And so I just wanted to hear what you all thought about that. My mother, Cheryl Davila, is working on an initiative in the city of Berkeley to declare an emergency and to get on more of an evidence-based timeline or a 10-year timeline, and looking at initiatives to do that. If all the Bay Area folk who are in the room would like to network and work on that, that'd be awesome. But I was just really genuinely curious about
So the reason that you hear things like that is because of what Ken Alex talked about. He was the keynote speaker in the very beginning. Ken Alex talked about this fact that we could lose the entire ice sheet. This fact that we could not keep our temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius unless we eliminate emissions much sooner and even have negative emissions. We're probably going to go over 2 degrees Celsius. Okay, so these kinds of things are the reality. And this is also why I keep harping on hydrogen. Well, because we do need to implement the batteries, and I agree that we should implement them first. They are a more commercially viable technology today. But we also need to do hydrogen, because if we don't do all of this, we can't make the difference soon enough. We can't make it soon enough. We gotta have all of these things, and we gotta deploy them around the world, right, in order to actually avoid the climate disaster that we are facing.
Maybe I add something. In Germany, we are talking about these Energiewende since 35 years now. It's 35 years ago where the first study which generated the name Energiewende was published. And so in principle, you could ask also, why are we not ready? So it's why aren't we? So changing a society is not that easy. First, the inner democracy. So that's the second thing. So you want to change a society. You want to, first, the people don't believe what you're told and about climate change and all these things. You have some very prominent people at the moment which are not believing in climate change. But in Europe, we have less of them, but still, it is the fact that you have to convince a society to change. And that needs time. That needs time to educate. A lot of people learn now that there's a problem, a solution, and also it needed time to develop the technologies. 20 years ago, if I was asked by my students or others, do you believe that it is doable? I said, probably. Now I know it is makeable, it is doable. It was in Paris one of the differences to Copenhagen or others, that everyone believed that 100% was possible. 100% was the new norm. But now you have to bring it on the front. That means that you need 10, 20 years. That's the fastest you can do. But that is under war conditions, so that we start suddenly stopping everything. We concentrate only on climate mitigation. That is possible, but that is very hard to convince democracies to go under war conditions. That is the reason why the most studies need 30 years to do that. There is also another reason. If you want to exchange technologies, which is there, then you need 10, 20 years getting technologies out, putting new technologies in it. And that's the reason why we can't do it faster.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're going to have to bring this to a close to kind of try to get us back on time. Thank you very much for your participation as the audience. Thank you.